I am the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Housing and Community Development. Today is April 16th, 2024. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, modifying certain requirements for open meeting law, and relieving public bodies of certain requirements, including the requirement that public bodies conduct its meetings in a public place that is open and publicly accessible to the public, physically accessible to the public, the City Council is conducting this hearing virtually via Zoom. This hearing is being recorded. It will be live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82 and FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.housing@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record and available to all councillors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of the hearing. Individuals will be called on in the order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you wish to sign up for public testimony and have not done so, please email our Central Staff Liaison, Shane Pack, at shane.pac@boston.gov for the Zoom link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on Docket 0176, order for a hearing regarding the Homeownership Voucher Programme. This matter was sponsored by Councillors Brian Worrell and Councillor Liz Braden and referred to the committee on January 24th, 2024. Today I am joined by my colleagues in order of arrival, Councillor Enrique Pepin, Councillor Brian Worrell and Councillor Julia Mejia. I think I'd like to just ask my other co-sponsor, lead sponsor, Councillor Worrell, for an opening statement, a brief opening statement.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the panel for being here, as well as my colleagues. This is something that I'm excited about, something that we advocated for a couple of years ago, allocated ARPA dollars to not only the city wide voucher, but also to the position at BHA to make sure that we had somebody there pushing Section 8 to homeownership voucher program, or Section 8 to homeownership program. And we know the disparities that exist when it comes to homeownership, and also when it comes to for Black and Brown residents to obtain a loan. So I'm just wanting to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to make sure that the programs that help increase home ownership to Black and Brown communities, we're doing as a city. So looking forward to this conversation, looking to hear from the administration on what has worked, what are the impacts, where do we need more funding, and also how can we expand the citywide voucher program. So thank you again, and looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Pepin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the original sponsors of this bill, because it's a topic that is very near and dear to me personally, but also to my district. Just last week, Councillor at Large Henry Santana and myself attended a panel with MAHA, which is an organization that covers the entire city that helps low-income families, Black and Latino families across the entire city to become homeowners and obtain interest rates, low interest rates across our city. So I always am advocating for more opportunities for our families to become homeowners in our city, so that we can make sure that Boston continues to be that city that is welcoming to everyone, welcoming to my family, to my district. So I'm excited to be part of this conversation, to hear how I can be supportive of these vouchers and make sure that we are expanding it to as many families as we can. So thank you, Councilor Worrell, and thank you, Councilor Braden, for bringing this to the table.
Thank you, Councillor Pepin. Councillor Mejia, would you like a brief opening statement?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councilor Worrell, for your leadership in this space. Since the moment I met you, I know you've been out here fighting to create as many pathways towards home ownership for Boston residents, and I'm really happy to see Ms. Edwards in the building, in the Zoom here, because thumbprint, I always talk about the fact that the only reason why I'm a homeowner today was because of Alex E. Edwards. And everybody knows my story in terms of my mom, having a Section 8 voucher, and she was low income and priced out of the area that she had, and it really prompted me to understand the importance of stabilizing our family, right? And a pathway towards home ownership gets at a lot of the wealth gap that we've been talking about here in the city of Boston, right? And if we're really serious about helping people, then I think not only just creating more voucher availability, but also education for our families, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And I think that that's part of the conversation, is how do we communicate this to as many BHA residents so that they can take advantage of this. So looking forward to the communication and outreach engagement strategy and being a part of the solution. So thank you all, and I am happy to see our previous Councilor Bach here now, who is the bigwig over at BHA, making big things happen. So very hopeful for what's come of this conversation today.
Thank you, Councillor Mejia. Councillor Coletta, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the sponsor. And I appreciate seeing everybody here from the administration. This is a vital program. We all talk about the cliff and what it means for families and trying to invest in them and their futures and their generational wealth. This is something that I would love to see expanded as we increase investments in our families and in our city. And look forward to the conversation. And thank you again to the sponsor, Councilor Worrell. I hope I'm not missing anybody, but thank you, Councilor Worrell, specifically for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Coletta. I'll just say a few brief words. I think this is an incredible program. Home ownership. So many of our neighbours, it's part of the American dream to own your home and to build up equity in that home and to have some generational wealth to pass on to the next generation. I want to give a shout out to the great work that is done by MAHA. When we did our home buying courses way back, 27 years ago, we attended a MAHA home buying course, and it was really helpful. And so I just, with no more further ado, I'd like to pass it on to the panel that we have this afternoon. We have Director Kenzie Bach from the Boston Housing Authority, Karen Rabaza from the Boston Home Centre, Nick Kelly from BHA, Joanna Edwards from Thumbprint Realty, and Tessa Kahan from BHA also. I hope I haven't missed anyone, but I will hand it over to Director Bach. Sorry, I still call you Councillor Bach.
No worries, Madam.
Bach, you have the floor, and welcome everyone. This is a wonderful conversation to have.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to you and to Councillor Worrell for calling this hearing, and to Councillors Pepin, Mejia, and Coletta for being here, and really the whole City Council for supporting the programs that we're going to talk about today, because I really can't underscore enough how much this whole landscape has changed because of the ARPA investment that the Council authorized. A lot of what we're going to be talking about today are just programs that didn't exist 2 years ago. And in some cases, there are programs that were previously existing, but combining them with these new ones is what's really enabled our families to access home ownership. So I think it's absolutely the right conversation for us to be having at this juncture about okay, we've done something new and really important for closing that wealth gap in Boston. And now how do we sustain it? How do we learn from what we've been doing and continue it on? I'm going to speak on behalf of BHA, but I do just really want to acknowledge members of my team here. Nick Kelly, who's here, I think was before the council on another matter a few days ago, so many of you know him. Tessa Khan is here representing our homeownership team. Megan Ryan, who is the director and leader of that team, is on some well-deserved family vacation right now. So she is not with us, but she has been, the Councilor Worrell spoke to the need for us to have a point person and really like owning this work at the BHA, and Megan has been that and then some. She's been incredible, and she's built a great team, and Tessa's really the core of that. And if she were here, she would be singing Tessa's praises and talking about just like how much work she does day in, day out with our home buyers. So I'm really glad to have her on the call with me too. And you know, for the BHA, there's really two programs that I'm going to talk about today, and I thought I'd provide a little bit of overview of kind of what they are and where we are with them, but happy to get more in the weeds with the council as you all desire. So there's the First Home program. First Home's kind of our like overall name for kind of trying to provide a one-stop shop for BHA residents who want to become first-time home buyers. And so this is open both to our public housing residents and to our Section 8 residents. And one piece of the puzzle with First Home is that where the city provides $50,000 for eligible first-time home buyers, and I'll leave that to Karen to talk a little bit more about later, through the Home Center, and also access to the One Plus Boston mortgage program, a really affordable, great, high-quality mortgage product offered with a bunch of bank partners. The BHA First Home program gives folks all of that, and then an additional $25,000 of down payment assistance. And so that's been able to get our home buyers up to $75,000. And then for a lot of our home buyers throughout this period, Mass Dreams from the state, it hasn't always been available, but it's been available often. And so that's kind of come in with another $25,000. So there's been a lot of home buyers that we've been able to get almost $100,000 of home buyer assistance to over this period. The other thing, and then, you know, and some of our partners have been mentioned, you know, there's the idea to get the One Plus Boston mortgage, and to access these things, you need to take a first-time homebuyer class. We really want to make sure that like everybody who, you know, it's really important to build wealth, but key to building wealth is keeping hold of the asset. And so we want people to be prepared for that. And that's why first-time homebuying classes are so important. And then there's this other piece of the puzzle called the Section 8 to Homeownership program that the BHA has access to, that at a basic level is a HUD program where people can use their Section 8 voucher, to which gives them, you know, currently is helping to pay their monthly rent with a landlord somewhere. They can redirect that to helping to pay their monthly mortgage for up to 15 years. 15 years or until they go over income, whichever comes first. And so that is a game-changing program, and it actually it came to exist about 12 or 13 years ago now, but at the time that it came to exist, it didn't have any down payment assistance associated with it. And so for the first 12 years that BHA residents were eligible to participate in the Section 8 to Homeownership program, we had 2 families a year use it successfully. Now, the BHA has 17,000 federal vouchers, so 2 a year is not a large number. And I think that, you know, it was really kind of limping along. When we combined it with when the council appropriated $2 million for the BHA to provide down payment assistance in a, like augmentation of what the Home Center does, it just opened the gates. And so I'm happy to talk a bit about eligibility and everything, but the core upshot of our work together is that where previously over 12 years we helped 24 families, now just over this 1 year, BHA, I think we have literally closed, let me see, yes. So 38 families have closed on their home, and we've got another 7 that are scheduled under First Home. So there's 45 families. So it's doubling. And then there's an additional 3 families with the citywide voucher program, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So basically, you take that 24 for 12 years and you double it in 1 year, which is of course actually a 25x increase. So this is what I mean when I say, like, if we can sustain this type of homeownership access for folks who are in the BHA's programs, like, you know, doing roughly 50 families in a year, that's a lot of families, and it's a lot of generational wealth. And, you know, obviously we'd love to have it be even more, but like 50 a year, like, it really starts to move the needle. So, you know, we've been really excited about this, and we'd love to be able to sustain it. We've used about $1 million, but when you take the 7 families that are still scheduled to close, we're probably going to end up having used 1.15. of the 2 million for the down payment assistance for those initial 48 families. And so we basically think that we've got the money left, the 850,000 that we've got left in ARPA is about enough to do another 34 families with the ARPA allocation that we have. And we think that we will have helped that many families and gotten them to closing probably by the end of the calendar year. So that's where we are. We think like, you know, we're going gangbusters, but we definitely need to think about what our next resources are. We've been lucky to get a 850,000 grant from Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center through one of their processes that's going to continue to augment the program, but it's targeted in specific neighborhoods that are like in their service area for a project. So it's not something we can just use for all comers. So we're continuing to seek funding of all types, and happy to talk about that, and just want to give people a sense of where we are. Then before I cede the floor, I want to speak a little bit about the citywide voucher program and the kind of home ownership piece. So many of the counselors know the citywide voucher program, it's $11.75 million. It's as an annual appropriation from the city, and the lion's share of that was about creating a rental voucher program. And that's how most of it is used. But in last year's budget, counselors advocated for, including Councilor Worrell, like having a sort of pilot of a homeownership voucher program. And the specific goal there was to think about how can we help provide homeownership access to families that are kind of in this low to moderate income home buyer potential tranche, but are not BHA residents. And so we started that up. It was, you know, initially it's kind of been in a pilot phase this year. The funding was there for an initial 15 families, and the BHA ran a lottery through first-time homebuyer classes for eligible Boston residents who were between 50 and 80% AMI. And I mentioned that we've had 3 of those families also close on a home. We've learned some things along the way with that, like our first lottery we ran and a bunch of people we thought were eligible then couldn't clear pre-approval for their mortgage. And so we're basically gonna have to go back and run a lottery again. And one of the things we've learned from that process is how to better predict who's gonna be able to clear the other bars so that they can really have access to a home. And we also had some people who were actually so successful in buying a home that they got there before they could get approved through this program. So I think there's been some learnings there in our very first round of applying it, but it definitely, you know, it's definitely provided a good avenue for some folks who are not current BHA residents. I think the biggest picture thing that I want to say to the council is that the down payment assistance is just really critical. We're seeing in Boston, you know, there are some other good affordable mortgage programs out there, but if you can't make that initial down payment, the prices are just so high in Boston that it's really, really hard for anyone to access inventory. And so we've seen that that step up in down payment assistance be the real game changer for our residents. But what's very heartening for me is that of those 48 families that we've helped buy, I think, of the 48 families that we've seen buy, I think 44 of them were in the city of Boston. Tessa will clarify that for me. But basically, almost everybody in our program has been able to actually buy in the city limits, which is something that when we started this program, people were skeptical that we were going to be able to do. So I just think, like, you know, it can be easy to be kind of fatalistic. So I think it's important to like flag that, like, we did a thing and it's worked. It's actually anchoring our people here in Boston. It's allowing them to build wealth, generational wealth. I think about it like, you know, I'm somebody who's lucky enough to live in the house that my grandparents bought in the 1950s. I think about the fact that there are families from our residents who are buying these houses today that we hope like their grandkids will get to grow up in those houses. And so it's really transformational work. And we're very excited to do it in partnership with our partners at the Mayor's Office of Housing. So I want to just pass the baton over to Karen Rabassa and then be happy to take questions. Karen, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Karen Rabassa, and I'm the director of the Boston Home Center. I currently reside in East Boston. And this is really touching my heart. It really, you know, I just want to emphasize that this is one of the programs that I really enjoy, and especially when I hear expand the program and more in more funding, it is really, music to the Boston Home Center ears. So thank you all counselors for your support, not only for this program, for every programs out there for homeownership. As you know, the Boston Home Center, we believe that homeownership is not just a dream, but it's a fundamental pillar of stability and prosperity for our constituents and our communities. Our mission is really to empower and support individuals in achieving their dream of homeownership, particularly those within, Boston Housing Authority, the BHA, through our range of products and programs. And, including the first home program, provided to BHA tenants, it is an opportunity to transition from renting to owning a home. And we understand that navigating homeownership processing, it is really stressful. I went through it. I remember when I first bought my home, and it was really exhausting, tiring, so many pieces. And, this is when we as a team with the BHA, we collaborate to make this program successful. It is really amazing to see that the first year of this program that we really working together, we were able to close on the first year 29 and help 29 BHA homeowners. And a lot of these homeowners not only were able to buy a home, but were so competitive to market rate properties, which that now is it's really hard to be able to obtain a market rate property, not only because of the cost and value, but these programs will allow you to really increase your with the down payment, it will allow you to increase your purchasing power, and also being able to use your voucher assistance payment to be able to afford a mortgage and obtain a mortgage, which is really crucial. And I have to second what Director Buck said about, one critical component of our efforts, it's our commitment to providing down payment assistance. As housing costs continues to rise, down payment assistance has become increasingly vital for making homeownership achievable, particularly for those with limited financial resources. We're really dedicated to expand access to these programs and are grateful for your support and continue with these programs. I think that we are all clear that by investing in homeownership programs and supporting BHA buyers, we not only fulfill dreams for individuals and families, but also contribute to the overall well-being and vitality of our community. We're so proud to be a catalyst, or MOH is so proud to be a catalyst for the positive change, and look forward to continue our mission of promoting homeownership around the city of Boston. I can testify that, we have lenders that have been engaging into this program. We're still continue to work Boston Home Center with BHA, and especially Megan Ryan. We're still really pushing and having, fair lending practices, including in these programs as well. Like right now, we have 7 lenders that are really participating, and we are including every lender really from the One Plus Boston to be able to participate in this program, and allowed our constituents, especially BHA constituents, to really have more equal opportunities with different lending sets. So that is something that we're really pushing and really continue to work on. Thank you so much. And I don't know who I will pass this chair, so I think it will go to you, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Karen. I just want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councillor Ed Flynn of District 2 and Council President Russi Louis-Jean. Thank you for being here. Would you like to have some brief remarks, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Louis-Jean, President Louis-Jean? Councillor Flynn, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, I'll hold and not offer opening statements. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Louis-Jean?
Thank you, Councillor Braden, and thanks for everyone for being here. I'll just hold, and I just want to thank the administration for their incredible work. Have some questions regarding how this communications to residents, but I'll hold for now. Thank you.
And we've also been joined by Councillor Fernandez-Anderson. Councillor Fernandez-Anderson, do you have a brief opening statement? Just
I don't. I've been here a while. Thank you,
Oh, very good.
Madam
Sorry,
Chair.
I didn't, I've just noticed you coming up on the screen, so thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
So from the panel, who's next on the panel? Joanne Edwards from the Thumbprint Realty, would you like to speak to the issue from your side of the table, so to speak?
Sure, absolutely. Excuse me, I'm so happy to be here. My name is Joanna Edwards from Thumbprint Realty, and I'm so happy to share our perspective as someone who has boots on the ground, working as a real estate agent, advocating for a lot of the BHA voucher holders who are viewing homes and putting in offers on homes. And I'm happy and proud to say that last year, Thumbprint Realty was able to close 6 of those. We closed 2 this year and have 2 under agreement as recently as yesterday, and being able to secure homes in Boston. And it is with the ability to purchase with the down payment assistance and the ability to stack other down payment assistance products that they're able to use in order to make homeownership affordable. As we know, we're in a tumultuous market where the interest rates are fluctuating. The prices in Boston are extremely high. So the down payment assistance and the subsidy that these BHA voucher holders are able to use and apply has been critical in being able to compete in an open market with other buyers. I can say the average price point of the homes that these families have been able to purchase have been in between the prices of $489,000 and $665,000 in the city of Boston. And as a realtor, we've had to submit offers with about $50,000 over asking to secure these homes. And that would not have been possible without the down payment assistance and our knowledge as realtors to be able to advocate for our buyers and educate the listing agents about this program to put our buyers in the best position to compete for these homes. All of the homes that we've purchased, that we've assisted these buyers in purchasing, have all been in Boston, primarily the city of Hyde Park and Dorchester, all Black and brown families, excuse me. But I can say it's been critical. I can see firsthand the significant changes that it's making in these families' lives. A lot of single parent household, single moms who are purchasing the home and are putting them in a position that they would have never been able to imagine, coupled with the subsidy and the down payment assistance. And so I'm here to advocate not only in support of increasing the funding, but also just really just highlighting the impact that this funding has allowed these home buyers to have, and anything that we can do to support. We've hosted webinars to connect with BHA voucher holders. As recently as February 7th, we were able to graciously have Tessa and Megan co-host a webinar where we had over 300 registrants to participate in this webinar, and 100 of them participated, and we were able to have Councilor Worrell on that panel as well, just to show the need and the wealth of information that these folks were so desperately looking to seek, just to give themselves an opportunity to purchase in Boston. And so if anything I can take away, if anything anyone can take away, is the impact that this program has had and will continue to have if we're able to raise more funding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joanne. So I think that's the panel. I know other folks are here from BHA to answer questions if need be. But I'll open up questions from councillors. Councillor Worrell, the lead sponsor, would you like to, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the panel for your testimony. Good to see my colleague, my old colleague, Admin Bach, in your new role, and Joanna, thank you for all your work that you do in the neighborhood, and also Karen over at the Boston Home Center. I know it takes a collaborative effort to make this possible. And one of the things that I'm so excited about is that this program hits on so many different things that we talk about as elected officials, right? It starts to build generational wealth, housing stability, and gives Bostonians like a real chance to buy here in the market. I know one of the conversations in Community Now is this conversation around like the restrictive deeds, right? So can you talk to me about how many of these homeowners, if you have this data, are buying market properties and how many are buying ones with restrictive deeds?
I'm gonna ask Tessa to look that up for me. I don't know it off the top of my head. I'd say that we see home buyers make both choices. I think that obviously, and Joanna referenced the like, you know, you gave a range. We've seen our average price that a home's been purchased for at $507,000. So that's been the average, which means, of course, half of them are above that. And, you know, I talked to one resident of ours at Franklin Field, actually, who, like, she'd done first-time home buyer class. She'd been pre-approved, but she just, like, her pre-approval was just for too low of a total mortgage. And so she had gotten discouraged and given up. And then when the program came online and she learned about the down payment assistance, she went back into the market looking, and she was able to buy something. And it was literally like, for her, not possible without this, possible with this. And so, you know, we're really glad to help our home buyers access a bunch of market rate properties. And Tessa got me the information. Yeah, so of those 48 total families, only 4 of them have bought deed restricted. So, and those were 3 in Boston, 1 outside of Boston. So overall, we've had 43 of the 48 have been in Boston, 5 outside. And so just 3 out of the 43 were deed restricted. So, you know, mostly this has let our folks access market rate opportunities. And we think that's awesome. And it also means, because obviously the lotteries are crazy for the affordable properties. I think the flip side is, and maybe I'll pass it to Joanna because I know she has a good story about this, like, but obviously, like, while a deed restricted affordable property won't let you build as much equity as quickly, it can be a really amazing opportunity for someone, especially if they can stack it with the Section 8 to homeownerships. I don't know, Joanna, if you want to talk about that client of yours, just because I think it's such an awesome story.
Yes, we recently closed on a deed restricted home in Dorchester. Actually, the list price of that home was $489,611, and this voucher holder was able to not only purchase a deed restricted home, she was able to use a down payment assistance, which was able to help buy down her interest rate. In conjunction with the subsidy, her mortgage for the next 15 years will be 0. So because of the amount of funds that she was receiving and because of the subsidy, in conjunction with it already being a discounted home, it now awarded her the opportunity to use her funds that she's going to be making to either apply to her mortgage, she can use to create generational wealth. It really provides a relief for her and her family, and that was essentially unheard of within the closings that we've had with other BHA voucher holders. But the subsidy and the down payment assistance was able to cover her mortgage completely, where she does not have to bring anything to the table.
And that's awesome. And those cost saving measures are, you know, vital to families in our community. When I think about this program, I think about how to expand it. And one of the ways I think about how to expand it is getting our developers on board, right? Making sure that they're setting aside X amount of properties for our BHA residents, or, you know, those who go through the citywide voucher programs. Admin Buck, I don't know if you could speak to any, grounds that have been made on trying to get the, whether it's like a first right of refusal, getting, some of our developers to commit some properties to these to the residents of voucher holders.
Thank you, Counselor, for the question. I don't think we haven't really gotten there yet, but it's something I totally agree with you. I would love to do, because I feel like that, having a pipeline of just folks knowing like, oh, these are going to come online, and especially because once things are in construction, you can kind of predict, okay, this is going to be, because for us that would be great to be preparing home buyers and know that there was kind of an inventory that they were going to get first look at. We definitely, that's kind of been part of the theory of the new IDP policy on the rental side that has 3% for vouchers. A big piece of that is about getting our landlords around the city and our developers into relationship with the BHA, right? And into hosting our voucher holders and understanding that this is a really regular subsidy. It's the federal government. I always say it's like rent being a treasury bond, right? It's the federal government backing your monthly rent payment. Like, you couldn't do much better than that. And so one of my hopes, because as the council knows, the IDP policy, we're sort of in the year leading up to it actually going into effect. So one of BHA's core goals with developers is to really work on kind of making that an easy handshake and a good relationship to get our folks in buildings all around the city. And I think it's a really good point, Counselor, that as we're building those relationships, we should be saying, hey, and if what you're building is condos, if you're building home ownership opportunities, let's talk about that too. But I'm afraid I can't really boast of anything much that we've done on that front yet.
Okay, and then,
Councillor Worrell, time's up.
all right,
5
we
minutes.
have second round questions? Chair
Yeah,
Bray?
we'll keep it moving and we'll come around for the second round. Next up, Councillor Pepin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll piggyback up on Councilor Worrell's his last question. And you know, with the conversation of squares and streets happening in my specific neighborhoods, have we talked about how we can potentially include that into the conversations? How can, when we talk about development in the squares, how can we ensure that a percentage of those potentially go to voucher holders, et cetera? Has there been that conversation? I don't know if this is the right place to ask that question, but we'd love to know.
So again, I mean, honestly, I think the BHA would love to work with counselors, both district counselors in your specific areas, if you know of like good opportunities that you want to kind of help broker that conversation. But I also think it's a really good policy point. I mean, from my perspective, the BHA's role, like institutionally, is to provide an anchor for our families in the city. Like that's what we do, right? And I think about the fact that like if the BHA didn't have a property on St. Vital Street in the Back Bay, we wouldn't have hundreds of low-income seniors living there, right? Like it wouldn't happen by chance. And if we didn't have thousands of units in South Boston with today's South Boston rents, like it wouldn't happen. And the same with like, I mean, you can just name every neighborhood, right, that we've got units in. It's like we put those units in a long time ago, and now they continue to provide like a way for people from all walks of life to live in our neighborhood. So I think that if there are opportunities as we think about squares and streets in your neighborhoods or others to like think about, can we kind of have an anchoring role there too? And maybe it's with the rental stuff, but maybe it's something like this, right? With like getting our folks in anchored in homeownership opportunities. I think we're super open to partnership about that.
I appreciate that. And then my next question is, you mentioned that you've helped 48 families. First of all, that's amazing. What's the biggest obstacle that you have that is holding you from doing double that assistance? Basically, what I'm asking is, what can I do on the council to help you all help more families?
Yeah, so I mean, it's no surprise that it's money. I mean, I think I should say there are really two things. So one is, I should say that all of this, the way that like these different programs layer and interact together is quite complicated. And that's why like Megan Ryan and Tessa Khan are like all stars for us, and they really help our families like navigate through the processes. And it's also why like realtors like Joanna are so great, because we need people who will like hold the hands of our residents and like help them through this process and be able to help interpret, because the thing is like not everybody in the market understands this program, right? And so some people, I mean, we all know we're all warring against all cash buyers, right? And so like, you know, having somebody who can kind of like speak real estate and say, no, this person's good, like they're a good buyer, they're going to come through, they have all this money backing them from the city. We need those kind of translators. So I think both our staff and the real estate partners are really key. So that is a piece of it. And you know, Megan Ryan on my team has been all the way up to HUD National, like advocating on like little sort of like things that make it harder for us to use different banks and stuff. So we're definitely working hard in the advocacy space for how we bring down some of those administrative barriers. But then I think the other thing is money. You know, the BHA, through January of this year, any like eligible family that like by the program eligibility like signed up with us could get started in the like house searching pre-approval process. Now, because I mentioned with those 48 families, we're going to have spent that 1.15 of the down payment assistance, and we're sort of looking at the 850 remaining. Now, like new folks who sign up, we're kind of putting on a wait list until we know that we're going to have enough resource to support them. So obviously they can continue to be first-time home buyers and use the processes of the home center and others, right? We don't keep them from doing that, but I think like we're already staring down the end of the resource in terms of down payment assistance. And for us, we would like to just keep going gangbusters and be able to ratchet it up instead of down.
That's awesome. Thank you. And the last thing I'll say is, You recently helped a resident of mine in Hyde Park close on a townhouse in Hyde Park. So I wanted to thank you. And then it led me to wonder, I think this is more for Joanna. What's the interest rate for loans for a person with a voucher like this compared to what the market rate loans are?
So we've been seeing 2% lower than when the current market is. Our client who just recently closed locked in their interest rate of 4.5%. And so as you know, with the interest rates fluctuating, it could be anywhere from 7.5, 7.2. So it's been a significant drop in terms of their interest rate and their eligibility to be able to afford these loans. So it's about an average on 2%.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let's see who's next. Councillor Mejia, you have the floor. 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, Chair, don't worry. I got this 5 minutes. So really quick, I'm curious, and I'm sorry if this was mentioned, but I'm curious as to whereabouts are the homeowners in terms of regional, like across the city, outside the city? Where have we seen folks moving and purchasing?
Yeah, so maybe Joanna can speak to her clients. So Councillor, 43 of the 48 families we've helped so far have bought in the city of Boston. And a bunch of the city, the support that Karen's office provides is only for if you're buying in Boston. And the ARPA funds are only if you're buying in Boston. So, there's a small number of homeowners for whom it still made more sense to buy out of the city, but the vast majority have been using this assistance and buying in Boston. So yeah, 43 out of 48 for us. And then, we see them buying in a lot of different neighborhoods. Certainly I know about Hyde Park and Roxbury. Dorchester is definitely our most popular area by far, I would say. I do think it's obviously harder just because of price points to buy like condos downtown. But I don't know, Joanna, if you want to fill that out at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the areas that we've noticed that a lot of the buyers are purchasing are in Boston, of course, because they're using the One Plus Boston. Primarily, in my experience, for the ones I've closed have been Hyde Park. The one we recently had an offer accepted on yesterday was Hyde Park, and the other one we have under agreement is Hyde Park as well. And I will say that when we're referring to open market, when these down payment assistance funds are allowing these buyers to offer over list price. That's something I want to factor in. The buyers are not simply buying at the asking price. The down payment assistance is allowing these buyers to bid competitively in the open market, $20 to $30 to $40, almost $50,000 over list price. Without these funds, that would not be possible. So I do want to mention that the down payment assistance is allowing the BHA voucher holders to be very competitive in the open market.
And Karen, did you want to say anything about just in general the home center? I mean, obviously you guys are supporting. I should say we're talking about the BHA 48, which we're very, very proud of. But Karen does support hundreds of families buying in Boston.
Yes, so especially for our BHA buyers, and I can provide you if you guys want a specific and where the neighborhoods are, we can definitely check and those that we have funded. And I will be happy to, give you that information. Just so you know, the Boston Home Center does $50,000 for each of any of these buyers. So it is essential. And part of it, the 2% interest rate that you heard from Joanna, it's really because of the One Plus Boston program. So these buyers would tell you that, the AMI, if you're getting a 2% discount, is because there are below 80% of AMI. So this program is really touching into our very low income families that are 80% and below. So any data that you guys want, I will be happy to provide from those BHA buyers. But that is the mission and the vision for the Boston Home Center, right? Is really providing most of the down payment assistance. Like we said, it's really vital right now to provide, to enhance and increase purchasing power with low interest rate and with down payment assistance. Those are the key components right now for homeownership.
Yeah, I know my time. So thank you. One more question, please, just before I get
go
the
ahead,
buzzer.
Councillor Mejia.
Thank you, Councillor Breeden. So I want to just and first of all, amazing that we have so many people who are able to stay here in the city of Boston. That is unheard of, and I'm happy to hear that. I would love to see some thinking around how we incentivize other neighborhoods to, to open up, and create more affordable home ownership in other neighborhoods. Because what we don't want to continue to do is have segregated. It's great to be a homeowner, but I just want to get ahead of the narrative in terms of just making sure that we're just, able to live in all spaces and places. So I want to name that as something to be mindful of. And then to Joanna's, the whole idea of the fact that you all have been able to do so much. I would love to see more, right? And so as we're continuing to have these conversations during the budget cycle, I'm curious from either, from an outreach and engagement, are there any areas of growth in terms that will help increase aside from the money, but are there ways for us to get the word out to further reach others?
So I can speak up for the Boston Home Center. So we did a Realtor Summit last fall, which we invited and worked with VHA, Megan Ryan. We presented to realtors about this program, including lenders, and we're doing a lot of lender outreach, and we're also doing a lot of customer outreach and working very with Megan on hand in hand to present and be out there in the community. So that's what we're currently doing and continue to do. Our housing resource fair is coming up. It's going to be on the 27th of April, and that's where we also be engaging these programs.
That's great. That's great. I'm happy to hear that. Yep.
And
Councillor Coletta?
Councillor Braden, can I say just one word on Councillor Mejia's point?
Certainly, yes. And I'd just like to acknowledge that Councillor Durkin has joined us. Director Bach.
Yeah, just two quick things. One is just to say, I agree. I think, a bunch of the ARPA money that the city put into home ownership, it actually put into home ownership production. And that's really key for producing those affordable homes, especially in markets where the market is, if they can charge $1 million, they're going to charge $1 million, right, for the house. And so I think producing affordable homes in other neighborhoods around the city that are more out of reach is really important. So I just want to second that. And in terms of the communication, BHA's experience is that we've now got this wait list, and that the interest in the program has outstripped our capacity to serve folks with the money that we have. So I think communication is really important, but we've seen word of mouth be really strong on this program. And so for us, it's I would really like to be in a position where we could, communicate like heck, because we were trying to find more people to use all the resource that we had. But unfortunately, right now we're in the opposite situation.
Thank you. We've been joined by Councillor Durkin, as I said. Councillor Coletta, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you everybody for your questions and the administration for your answers. I love hearing that there's been progress in this space, and really credit a lot of the leadership to you all, Joanna, Kenzie, Karen. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I have been in and out of the conversation. I apologize if this question is repetitive, but in the course of reviewing an Article 80 project in East Boston, there were a couple that I had challenged basically the developer to include folks who are coming off of Section 8 and to try to reach out to BHA to figure out how to get this done. In one particular instance, they had promised to include, even though it's not mandated yet, but the 17+3 model of affordable housing within the new development project. And this is a way to build inclusive housing as our neighborhood in East Boston in particular grows and displaces, quite frankly, a lot of people because of gentrification. So in these new developments, I've asked developers to, as part of the rental process, please include some city-based vouchers or reach out to BHA to do some sort of partnership. But then on the opposite side, the homeownership voucher program, there was one developer who said, well, I don't know, we can't really do it because it's home ownership and we really need money, we need to subsidize it. And I had directed them to go to you all, and they said it really wasn't going to be working. And I just want to call that out. I don't really have a question around that, but I guess, like, what is your relationship with the, well, I guess I do have a question. What is your relationship with the BPDA as these new projects come online? Is there an opportunity to partner and just make sure that folks have access to these new spaces? And then also knowing that we have like a top 10% of earners, like in either individuals or families that are at the cusp of jumping off this cliff, what are the supports that we provide to them? What is the outreach that is conducted, if any? And again, I apologize if this is redundant, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So a couple of thoughts. One is, I think we're definitely, and Councillors Morell and Pepin have brought up the same thing. I think we're definitely open to the idea that as we start to talk, we sort of know we're going into kind of permanent relationship with developers around the rental voucher side. I think the opportunity to sort of think about talking more intentionally about how we get our BHA residents into the home ownership opportunities seems like a great thing for us to do from both the policy perspective and also like in those specific kind of relationships. I'd love councillors to reach out to me and my team about that. I think that with the home ownership voucher program, because it was a pilot funded last year, just 15 vouchers, we didn't have like a project basing conception of that like voucher program. Like it was really just to support individual families. And so we didn't have it set up to kind of be attached to a building like you're describing. But obviously we do have project-based voucher programs of various types, and I think it's a good idea to think about how we could do that going forward. So I'd love to think about and work on that, because like I said, anywhere we can anchor our folks, and if it's a home ownership opportunity. The other thing is, like, we don't even, Councilor Worrell alluded to this, but like we don't even need to project-base a voucher if we got a developer to just say that they were going to give right of first refusal to like folks in the BHA first home program, right? Like they could actually get market rate out of that. But if they just kind of gave a first look to our people, a right of first offer or something, like I think there's probably a way that wouldn't actually cost any more, but would help make sure that those folks were getting into those units. So it's something I'd love to continue to explore.
Thank you. And just the second part of that was proactive outreach to our top earners, I guess.
So the way that you mean it within like BHA residents, right?
Yes, exactly. And I'm sorry that I'm just not getting the right word coming to my brain.
No. So actually, in some ways, the program is geared that way, anyways, because what we found is with our families, like it's very hard for people to get pre-approvals from banks and through the mortgage program if they're not kind of at 50% of AMI, which we're really glad we can support folks at that kind of 50 to 80 bracket. Where they can't really traditionally buy very easily outside of our program, but much lower than 50% AMI really doesn't work with and the feds have minimums except when you're dealing with elderly and disabled families. And so what's good for us is that actually eligibility for the voucher program to enter the federal voucher program is that you have to be under 50% of AMI. Most of our families are much lower when they become voucher holders, and then you don't get kicked off the program when you go over 50, but when you're at 50 and you're sort of going up towards 80, you start depending on the exact details of your situation to get close. So we actually feel like we're already targeting the first home program to the folks who are kind of more at that cusp. And that's part of why we see it as a really good pathway for them, because instead of giving them that cliff effect, right, which is you start making too much money and now you're off the program and suddenly you can't afford housing in Boston. Instead, it's like making homeownership the logical next step, which is sort of how things are supposed to work from our perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Coletta. Councillor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was listening to the conversation. Just want to also express my thanks to the administration team that is here and that's doing excellent work on this issue and other issues. I want to recognize my colleague, former City Councilor Kenzie Bach as well. Kenzie, it's good to be with you and your team. So I was thinking, Kenzie, about about my district and the large immigrant residents I have and the large number of Asian residents I have. What is the best way for immigrant neighbors or the Asian community? I think there are unique challenges, but how is it important for them to, when they're in BHA developments, is it important for them to then proceed to try to get into a lottery and to try to buy a home, or is it more important for them to stay at the BHA development? The reason I ask it, because I don't necessarily see a trend where they move from BHA to home ownership, and just wanted to get your thoughts about that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Flynn. I mean, I think what we think is important for our families is to have opportunities and options. So, you know, for some families, it might be that the thing that they want is to stay where they are, anchored in place, and the BHA is really proud to provide that. And for other folks, it might be that their dream is to own a home, or, you know, owning a home will allow them to have, you know, if you're, for instance, you know, if you're a senior living in an elderly building in a 1-bedroom unit, and then you realize that you'd actually like to be living in a multi-generational home, right, with 3 generations or something, well, it's going to be hard to do that in that type of building, right? So I think like we want to have pathways that are open to everybody, and I think one of our frustrations and one of the real reasons that we've created this program, why Karen does her work, is that it used to be that there was just a lot more kind of like more affordable homeownership opportunities in the market. And so it just used to be the case that more people could, without assistance, start earning more and then buy. And that's really like stopped being the case in a lot of the city. And obviously that's especially true in like Chinatown. If you don't have, with the exception of if you've got like actual affordable condo projects, right, that get agreed through affordable housing funds, like other than that, you're not going to get an affordable condo downtown. And so, you know, I think that's part of why we think we have to have these programs, is to make sure that there's still that pathway for some people, but it's definitely true that we're not able to do it for as many people as when that market was there.
Thank you, Kenzie. And Madam Chair, may I ask one more question?
Yes, Councillor Flynn, you've got some time for another question.
Okay, thank you. And maybe just as a follow-up, Kenzie, what are some of the unique challenges facing immigrants or people that may not speak English as a first language? What are some of the challenges they have in terms of trying to participate in a city-sponsored program for home ownership?
Yeah, so I mean, I think language access is something we think about a lot at the BHA, right? And making sure that we've got both not just able to translate vital documents, but translate for people and have them like, you know, understand. And that's actually something that we work a lot on here, and we have a really good language access team, and it's, you know, we think it's one of the ways that we're really able to help folks. So I think language is key. I think, you know, one of the reasons that the 1+ Boston mortgage program I think is so good is because, you know, the world of mortgages is really complicated to navigate. And so if you add language challenges on top of that, that can be really difficult. And so having like a really good standard product that's sort of backed by the city, where people know they're not going to be taken advantage of, and that they're going to work with a reputable bank and have a reputable, like, you know, a rate that they can be proud of. I don't know, Karen, if you want to speak to that at all, but I feel like that's one of the advantages, is that for somebody, it's so easy to get taken advantage of in this landscape. And there's all these like, you know, sketchy mortgage, like intermediary companies these days. And I think of that as being one of the advantages of 1+ Boston. But I don't know, Karen, if you want to.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kenzie. So the other thing that we noticed that there is a lot of challenges besides, you know, connecting to the correct lender is really credit, understanding credit and the way that things are done here. And then we have the credit boot camp program that we work with Urban Edge. So that is something that we do emphasize when we get into new immigrants and understanding the ways of lending and how to become a successful homeowner. So if you ever encounter anything like that, please feel free to send them directly to the Boston Home Center, and we will take them under our wing and walk them through the process and make sure that they get the right and the correct information, because that's something that we do. We want to make sure that everyone that buys in Boston and qualifies to buy in Boston uses, and especially if they are income eligible, that they use the 1+ Boston program. So they don't have so they have the fair lending practices. And that is something that we also talk to our lenders, especially with immigrants, to make sure that they have someone that speaks their language. And even though their lender documents is still in English, they cannot provide them in different languages, but at least they're giving information in their native language, and that they have someone that they could assist them with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Kenzie. Thank you, Madam Chair. And financial literacy is also important, so thank you for bringing that up, Karen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Next up, Council President Louis-Jean. You have the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Braden, and thank you to the chair for this filing and for hosting this hearing. I guess I have a question on communications. How are folks, our BHA residents, how are they learning about these opportunities? If you've gone through that, my apologies, but that's what I care most about. How are folks learning about these opportunities?
Yeah, so thank you, Councilor. So initially, the BHA did like phone calls and letters out to folks who were like in that income eligible bracket for the program. What happened then was that words kind of spread like wildfire. And so, as I mentioned, we've had a ton of folks sign up, and now we're at the point where we're waitlisting folks. So we haven't done a recent second round of marketing and access, because telling everybody that we've got a program but that we can't help them yet because we don't know if we're going to have the money doesn't seem like a great dynamic. So we haven't done a recent round of publicity on it, although I would say that I think the word is out amongst many of our communities.
Thank you. And I think Councilor Orell asked a question regarding the types of properties the types of properties that folks are moving into. Is there a way to generalize the types of properties that folks are moving into? You mentioned that the supermajority are in the city of Boston, and then I believe he asked about whether or not they were deed restricted, or are we talking about 3 bedrooms? Like, what are the characteristics of these properties that, in addition to what I think is a fabulous, fantastic, that we're using the 1+ Boston mortgage program, which is an essential program that we need more banks to participate in to have affordable and sustainable mortgage products available to our families. But what are the characteristics of these homes that folks are purchasing?
Yeah, so our most popular are condos and townhouses, but there are a lot of single families too. The one limitation on the Section 8 to Homeownership program, which most of our buyers are using, is that they can't buy like a multifamily. They have to buy something because there's a requirement that the unit be owner occupied, so you can't buy the owner occupied unit and an additional unit. Although, families can buy those, like 2 families or something, just with the down payment assistance. They just can't use the federal program for it. But yeah, it's the whole mix of condos, townhouses, single families. I don't know, Joanna, if you had any further.
No, yes, I agree with you. A majority of the ones that Thumper has closed has been single-family homes, particularly in the Hyde Park area, and a few townhomes as well. The deed-restricted home that our client purchased was a townhome.
Awesome. Thank you. Those are my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Louis-Jean. Councillor Fernandez-Anderson. Hang on to just clear my timer here.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You have the floor. 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Chair Bach or Council Bach, nice to see you here. I apologies, as my colleagues have already stated, if I ask any questions that are repetitive. I guess just wondering about specifically additional funding to expand the programs that you already have to accommodate homeownership aspirations. And just, do you have any particular grants you're going after or any particular additional initiatives that you'll be taking?
Yeah, so thank you, Counselor. I would say we're kind of eyeing any grant opportunity right now on this, and we've had, there was one fairly big one I was hoping for that didn't come through for us. I won't shame them by saying who it was, but like I mentioned, we were really thrilled to get this $850,000 recently from Beth Israel, which is targeted at buyers in specific neighborhoods, so it won't serve us as for kind of the citywide arc that we want for the program. I mean, I definitely think, like I said, just the clock that we're on with how many families that we're helping and the pace that they're buying does mean we think we're going to run out of the ARPA funds by the end of the year. So, so we are actively seeking funding. The BHA's core federal programs operate on a structural deficit, so we don't have money there that we can steal for this purpose. But we're definitely, it's too good of a thing to give up. So we are definitely chasing all different sources for it, and would love, anybody. I mean, I think about it like, I feel like there's a recognition in the city in terms of like what people talk about, right, of the need to close the racial wealth gap and of housing as health, and that's why it was great to have Beth Israel in. But we feel like this is kind of this is a chance for folks to put their money where their mouth is on that front, and so we're definitely hoping that that we'll find some good partners before the end of the year.
Thank you. In terms of specific, like while we're on the topic of minorities, disproportionate impacted, what are the limitations and what have you seen in terms of numbers of the people impacted? And are there specific efforts to ensure that minority applicants are prioritized?
Well, so definitely the supermajority of the folks who are using the program are people of color, are Black and brown families, because that's the supermajority of who the BHA serves. I can get you the exact demographic info, Counselor, and I'll ask Tessa if she has it to hand right now. But that's been heavily the case. And then with the smaller pilot for homeownership voucher program for the non-BHA residents, one of the eligibility requirements on that is to be a first-generation home buyer, which is another way that we found of kind of, targeting to address the racial wealth gap, because, lots of people might be a first-time home buyer, but their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents all owned homes. That's really different from if you're the first generation to buy a home in your family. So, but I think Tessa tells me that so far it's been 100% families of color.
Thank you. I'm really interested in the success rate in terms of your Section 8 homeownership program. I know that there was a linkage program of some sort, and I think it used to be called that, correct me if I'm wrong, but where are you with that? It used to take people a really long time just to get through the waiting list. And what is the success rate so far?
So sorry, the success rate of the Section 8 to homeownership?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say right now, so like I mentioned at the start, we used to, that Section 8 to homeownership program without down payment assistance, like people really couldn't get a home. And so we were seeing 2 families a year use it successfully over the first 12 years that we had it. And then now in the 13th year, we've had, 48 total, but I think of the Section 8 to homeownership in the low 40s. So, basically blown out of the water what our rate was before. So I would say that in general, I mean, it's a tough thing to measure success rate of, because obviously some families are still looking, but they haven't given up, right? But I would say that, the families who signed up with us a year ago when this program started, like in Section 8 to homeownership, by and large have closed on houses. So I think the success rate, the down payment assistance has turned out to be the key. That and like staff who really work with folks, that was key too. Like the BHA didn't have dedicated staff before this program, and now with Megan Ryan and Tessa Khan like holding everybody's hand through like this kind of crazy process that we put home buyers through as a country, it's really made a huge difference.
Makes total sense. Thank you. Is that my time? I clocked myself. It was like I had 1 minute left.
Your time is up. I'm sorry.
I clocked myself, Chair, and I have 1 minute left, but okay. Thanks.
Hey. My ancient time.
Oh, your clock is faster than mine.
Councillor Durkin, you have the floor. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. And great to see former Councillor Kenzie Bach here, our VHA administrator. And I'm grateful to the Boston Home Center and the One Boston program, mortgage program, for all that they do. So I wanted to get into a little bit of like the deed restriction and like the reselling element. Because I noticed, I was looking at the website and I noticed there are some tools if you're reselling. Has anyone resold any of their homes yet?
So I'll let Karen speak to those in a second, but just to be clear, so none of the reselling restrictions apply to our home buyers who buy a market home with our program. So the reselling restrictions apply for deed restricted. So for instance, like the 3 Boston families that we've had buy deed restricted affordable homes, like those are the people it would apply to. And then it's really MOH that kind of manages that side of the house. So I don't know, Karen, if you want to speak about that a little bit.
Okay, so the majority of these are bought and just there's mortgages. The majority of these do not have a deed restriction. It's just, okay.
Correct. And I think like a way of thinking about it is like when people buy in the market, it's like the federal government is like the lion's share of the money, like we're providing this one-time down payment assistance, but the lion's share of the money that's helping our BHA residents buy these homes is this ongoing federal subsidy. And so it's a lot of money from the federal government. From the federal government's perspective, they're helping people build wealth instead of like just paying rent. So it's like a good deal. When you're on the side of producing affordable units, the things folks have to remember, and I know deed restrictions, are a controversial topic, but what happens is the city's spending like often $300,000, $400,000 to close the gap between what it costs to construct these homes and the price that they're selling them at. So the way I think about it is almost like the city's buying an easement on the home with like to produce it. And the reason it's buying that restriction is so that a family 20 years from now who's at a similar price point will be able to live in the city of Boston. So they're trying to balance this thing of like, on the one hand, we use housing to build wealth in this country, but on the other hand, we need housing to keep our families here in this country, right? And so like, how do you balance? Because if you don't do any restriction, then you might have one generation that makes a lot of money by moving out of the city, but then the next generation, you don't have any product for anybody to buy. So
not to use a track analogy, but it's like passing the baton to the next family that needs that opportunity.
Right.
Got it. And sorry, Karen, I'll let you answer that question too.
Yeah, no, I mean, Kenzie did a great job already explaining how it works, but I also want to add that our financial assistance is not a loan, it's a grant. So we're not putting any liens on the property. So whoever does a market rate, then, they already come up with an equity on their home by, $75,000 to $100,000 in equity. So, so that's how we do it now.
And sorry, my next question is sort of I'll just ask my 2 questions, then I'll let you guys, because I know I'm running out of time, but wanted to talk about how as a city councilor, we can advocate in the Article 80 process for home ownership vouchers. That is of particular interest in my district, especially in Mission Hill, of how we can have more affordable home ownership opportunities. And then wanted to also get an idea of how we can advocate for there to be a diversity of zip codes and obviously, representing West End, Beacon Hill, Back Bay, Fenway, Mission Hill, making sure that these affordable homeownership vouchers are available in all neighborhoods, and sort of how can we ensure that both in the development process and other levers that we have as city councilors.
Great, thank you, Councillor. So taking the second one first, I would say that one way in which we've helped give our voucher holders access to more zip codes is that their home ownership vouchers, like the rental vouchers, operate on this zip code based maximum payment standard system. So your voucher is actually worth more per month if you're trying to like buy in a more expensive zip code. So in that way, we've really helped people access more expensive zip codes, and that's been a big change. And we talk about it mostly on the rental side, but it also helps on this home ownership side. I think that in terms of really producing affordable home ownership opportunities in your district, I think that it does come back to producing affordable units, because it's just really hard. Even if we are giving people even if when you stack everything, people are getting $100,000 in down payment assistance, it's just really hard to get to the price points in some of those neighborhoods. So unless we're producing them, some of that is, I think, really holding with condo projects, really holding to on-site IDP. And not letting people kind of buy it out or put it somewhere else. I think that's a piece of it with the home ownership projects, and often there's not a lot of desire to do that. And I think one of the things coming out of today is sort of thinking about how we can partner more with the BPDA and with you guys as counselors around what you just mentioned in Mission Hill and other places. I would love to see something where there's some kind of right of first offer or something to our BHA resident participants, because they could, even without them being affordable homes, they could maybe we could just buy down the price a little bit and then they could afford them. So I think there's an interesting idea there that we haven't really explored enough.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Durkin. I'm going to give myself 5 minutes, and then we'll see if anyone else will go another second round. Okay. I'm interested in the idea about the distribution across the city. I totally appreciate that Hyde Park and Mattapan, Dorchester, that's where housing, where the predominant uptake is of this. I know years ago, when I was complaining that families couldn't afford to buy a home in Alston Brighton, my predecessor, Councillor Siomo, said, "Tell them to go to Hyde Park." So I think I'd really love to explore how, in Alston Brighton we have a fund for down payment assistance because a developer didn't want to build IDP units on site, but then we bump into the problem of having housing that actually residents are able to afford. So I'm encouraged, Joanna, with your saying that these voucher holders and these people down payment assistance combined with a One Boston mortgage are able to compete in the market for market rate housing. Could you tell me more about that?
Yes, and so as we know, the prices in Boston are escalating, and on average, for the homes that these buyers are eligible for, their pre-approvals are anywhere between maybe $500,000 to about $600,000. And so now, what I do as a realtor, when I see that there's a home in the market that a buyer is interested in, I reach out to the lender. And I asked the lender, hey, I see that the buyer is eligible for $75,000. They also have an additional $30,000 in stash funds that they're eligible for, in addition to another independent down payment assistance program. So now what the lender does is they now reassess the funds that they're getting in addition to the subsidy and say, okay, well, the buyer was pre-approved for $600,000. With these additional funds, they're now able to go up another $30,000. And so with my process and knowing and doing the comps and understanding that we can now look at homes about $20,000 to $30,000 below their pre-approval to now give them leverage when they're putting in offers to compete in the open market. And so, as I said earlier, a lot of the buyers are able to purchase homes, and they have to be competitive, and they're offering about $20,000 to $30,000 over asking to be able to live in areas like Hyde Park, Dorchester. On average, without down payment assistance, without subsidy, these are the prices that the open market are bidding on homes. And so when I say there's a significant amount of money, this significant amount of money is critical to allowing them to compete in the open market. That's what I'm referencing. So being able to stack these down payment assistance programs in addition to One Plus Boston, in addition to the Boston Home Center, and having the One Plus Boston lower their interest rate has made an exponential difference in allowing these home buyers to be able to compete in the open market.
That's very encouraging. Go ahead.
And Councillor Braden, we have had one of our BHA folks buy a lottery unit in Brighton recently, so I just wanted to flag that to you.
I think what frustrates me is that we have developers who come along and they say they're going to build a condo project and they get approval and then they come along afterwards and say, oh, we can't sell it because blah, blah. And I think, and then they try and change it over to rentals. So, given that Alston has like a 10% home ownership rate, we're really desperate to get more people to be able to buy a home, a condo or whatever. In the neighborhood. So that's encouraging. I think we just need to hold them accountable and insist that if they get approved and get community support for a condo building, that it stays that way, and that we get those condo IDP units, those lottery units opened up to these. I think really my colleagues have asked so many of the questions. I would really love to get a breakdown of by district, like where is it predominant? I know you said predominantly Hyde Park, but other neighborhoods.
We can provide a zip code based breakdown for the BHA ones, and I'm sure Karen can do the same for the overall city ones. We're happy to do that, Councillor. Yeah, and I think it's really incredibly important work that you're doing, and I really appreciate. It's so exciting when those folks get their hand on the key for their first home. It's really life-changing, so I appreciate all that great work. I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm just going to ask my colleagues, anyone want a second round of questions? Councillor Mejia, you had your hand up first. Councillor Mejia?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Chair Braden, and thank you again to everyone. Yep, I just wanted to ask, I used to do a lot of workshops with women who were transitioning out of welfare and shelter. And one of the things that I did was, it's one thing to get into a house or, into your own apartment, and the other is to keep it. Because what I learned in my work in that space was that a lot of women will end up in situations where they would lose their lease, they would lose their voucher, and they would do just things. So I'm just curious, what are we doing on the helping to sustain folks, and what type of training and education and technical assistance is provided to families once they have had their home, and how long the technical assistance lasts for, to ensure that we're not setting people up with unintended consequences and finding themselves in a situation they don't need to be in.
So I can answer that, and thank you. That's a very important question. One of our goals for the Boston Home Center is how do we help them buy, fix, and retain their homes, right? It's really have successful home ownership. And we do it through a number of workshops, programs. We're working also with the Center of Working Families, because it's not only in the beginning of the home ownership, it's also when you are a homeowner, everything that comes with a home, even maintaining your credit, income, stability, how do you do financial literacy, budgeting. So all of that is the Boston Home Center role. And like I said, we're working with different workshops. We're promoting home ownership, and then we have different programs, and we work with our nonprofit partners as well with the Center of Working Families. So that is something that we're really engaging, and we're really pushing here at the Boston Home Center to make sure that nobody loses their home as is part of our foreclosure prevention program as well.
Great, I'm happy to hear that. Thank you, Karen. And lastly, just curious about language access and your communication rollout. We have an ordinance here that says everything that comes out in English the same day comes out the top 11 languages, and I'm just curious what your language access capabilities have been in this particular initiative, and what, if any, gaps you believe we need to fill to help get the word out to many more.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So the language access team here at BHA, we have a bunch of in-house translators of written materials, and also folks who do verbal translation. So anything that the First Home team's sending out, they've been getting translation from the language access team in advance, so that they've got all those documents translated into the languages that our voucher holders need access to. And I should also mention that I think two of the lenders that we work with are specifically kind of Spanish speaking capable, is like a big, it's a big draw for some of our folks. We also have our language access team translate any phone call type communications that the team needs if they aren't English speaking. So for us, the BHA's had a pretty robust language access team built out for a while now, and we see it as core to our operations. And folks here know that you can't send out an informational letter and not have it already translated out of our shop.
Thank you.
For the Boston Home Center, we do that too. We have all our programs and website. It's everything on our website in 11 languages.
Am I frozen?
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councilor Morel and Councilor Braden, for bringing this to the council. I look forward to supporting the advocacy to expand and continue to grow this program. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Councillor Mejia. Councillor Worrell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And before you start my time, how much time do we have?
3 minutes for the second round.
3 minutes for the second round, Chair? All right.
Well, since you're the lead sponsor, I'll give you a couple of extra minutes.
I appreciate that, Chair. Thank you. Admin Bach, you're looking, sounds like you are looking for more funding. You have 850 left for 34 families for 1 year. I'm not sure how big your wait list is, but how much more funding are you looking to get for this program to still be viable?
So, I mean, I think the way we're thinking about it is that we're going to end up having, because we had our first family closed last April on their home. So the way we're thinking about it is that we're kind of on track to have spent $2 million in a year and a half, roughly. So it's basically we're finding that we can get $1.5 million out the door a year. And that's at our current staffing levels, right? With our current kind of incredible team here. So that's not even really ramping up. So I think that's how we're thinking about it, just in terms of literally measuring our rate of spend so far. But any money we can get, we're gonna spend on this program. It's really I think it's one of the things. This and our family self-sufficiency program are two of the things that we feel like the BHA is doing that really changed the game in terms of wealth building in Boston. And family self-sufficiency is a program that lets our families, as they grow their income, instead of paying more to the BHA, they escrow that additional money as a savings account for themselves. And I mention FSS because of those families that we talked about today, 26 of them are FSS participants. So we've literally seen people climbing this ladder of saving money through FSS and then using it to buy a home in combination with all these programs. So we think it's really vital, but that's about the run rate is about $1.5 million a year.
Awesome. And Joanna, I see you have your hand raised, Joanna.
And did you have a comment?
Oh, I just wanted to answer your question, Ms. Brady, in regards to Brighton. I just quickly looked up the comps, and in the last 12 months, the lowest home that's been sold in Brighton was for about $800,000. Those were the only homes that were sold under $1 million in Brighton over the last 12 months. So not only is there not a lot of inventory in Brighton, there's also the price point is just way too much to make homeownership affordable in Brighton for the BHA voucher holders. So I just wanted to give you some quick stats. Just to answer your
Thank you. I do know that there's condo buildings that, are coming in lower than that, but yeah, we'll have to just keep them condo buildings. Thank you. Thanks for looking that up for us.
Chair, that was not my time, Chair. That was your time.
I appreciate that. I'm watching that. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Worrell.
And speaking to kind of that point, Joanna, I don't know if this is for you, Admin Bach, but can you talk about the impact, right? How much are we seeing first-time home buyers buying power increase under this program? Just to kind of give, the counselors an understanding of the effectiveness, right? Are they going from 100,000 to 600,000 in their pre-approval letters? Can you speak to the impact?
Yeah, so I think we're seeing about an average increase of 200,000 in their pre-approval amount. And so when you consider that, and then you consider that the down payment assistance, right, is often going to help them go even higher. So if they're ending up, I think they can end up with, for a lot of our folks, this is kind of making a $300,000 difference for them. So it's huge. It's huge. And that's, like I said, I mentioned that woman who, she had been pre-approved for $300,000 that just wasn't going to get her anything. And then when the program changed, she was able to get that pre-approval up into the 500s, and she ended up buying a $600,000 unit. You know, it's a total game changer.
Awesome. And then you spoke about the citywide voucher homeownership program. Sounds like you're going to be making more adjustments. Can you talk to me about what adjustments?
Yeah, so that program, you have to be a first generation home buyer between 50 and 80% AMI and doing a first time home buyer program. And we actually used our first time home buyer program partners as like referrers for people into the lottery for that. What happened was we ran the lottery for that and pulled 15 names, and about half the folks who we pulled ended up like getting weeded out by other aspects of the process, like not our stuff, but like whether they could get their pre-approval letter or their banks and whatever. So I think what we figured out is that we need to do a little bit more funneling so that the funnel before the lottery really just puts people who can use the product in the lottery, because there's no point in us getting people's hopes up. And also, like, you know, if that hadn't happened, we would have had a lot more. So so it's like, you know, we have 15, but then we lost half of them that way. So then we're gonna have to re-lottery for those slots. Meanwhile, we've had 3 families close. We've got another 4 that are very active in the process. One we think is gonna reach an agreement shortly. So, you know, it's moving along, but I think we just, in terms of like making it a repetitive thing, we want to streamline that process a little bit. And it is tricky because, again, you've got so much demand and only a pretty small resource. So, you know, trying to figure that piece out.
No, that makes sense. Like maybe having a pre-approval letter to, you know, before you apply will be part of the application process. What makes sense,
something like
right?
That.
My last two questions, Chair, is can you talk to me about working with lenders to create products, you know, because, you know, you was mentioning this is basically like a treasury bond for developers or the bank, you know, what have you. Can you talk to me about lenders and how you've engaged them to create products that's kind of tailored around the assistance that we have here in the city of Boston? And then also just kind of around like the whole conversation with developers on first right of refusal. It will be helpful for me as a district councilor, because when we're having these conversations with developers, to kind of know what the demand is. Like, are people looking for 2 families? Are people looking for 3 families? Like, what are their price points? So that when we're in these conversations with developers on what to build in our neighborhood, we can say, you know what, make sure you're building 3 families at this price, not 3 families, but 3 bedrooms at this price point, and make that first right of refusal to the BHA program.
Yeah, so thank you, Councilor. On that last point, we have a detailed breakdown of all the typologies of housing that our folks have bought. So I think we could definitely pull that and give it to you and give you a sense of the price points, and would love to have that be used as comparable data for those conversations that you're having. And I think we should all think a little bit about, what would be the reasonable parameters of a right of first offer program that would kind of give us enough time to get our people in, but not be so much time that developers feel like it's super onerous. I think we could probably figure something out, but we should talk more about that and love your leadership on that. And in the first question with lenders, so, my true expert ringer on this, Megan Ryan, is not here. So, she's been part of really pushing on this, but I think that, one of the early things that we've seen is just that credit rating continues to be a barrier with lenders, even though you've got the federal government backing you. So it's kind of it's not really your credit that's going to determine the likelihood of payment here. So I think that's an area for continued conversation, and just getting folks to, I think we've had one of the benefits of working now with repeat lender partners and realtor partners is folks sort of understanding that the voucher is a piece of the income equation. I think when you're dealing with people who don't know that their initial allergy is sort of, oh, this person doesn't make enough money for that to afford this kind of loan. So I think there's been a lot of education. But I think that, we can get from Megan, I don't know, Tessa, if you have any thoughts on what we're trying to get our lenders to do, but I know we're going, like I said, all the way to HUD to try to get them to nudge, because often it's HUD that kind of can set some of the parameters and really get the bank's attentions at a national level. But I should say, we have hugely benefited from the banking relationships that Karen's team cultivates with One Plus Boston, like having a stable of lenders who we've been able to educate over the year about the BHA program. Like, it wouldn't have existed if there wasn't already that stable of One Plus Boston lenders. So I don't know, Karen, if you want to speak a little bit about the lender point.
Yeah, so what I want to, right now, BHA are working with 7 lenders. From 6 out of the 7 lenders are One Plus Boston program. So currently we have 12 participating lenders in the BHC One Plus Boston lender list. And right now our goal is to really have those 12 lenders be able to participate on BHA, which right now 6, which is our strongest lenders really for the One Plus Boston. So that is a good relief. I'm looking at the list, and they're very strong not only in One Plus Boston, but as Kenzie mentioned, they're becoming very strong in understanding the program, and they are being underwritten by MHP guidelines, which they have their own guidelines on how to use and facilitate the Section 8 vouchers, which I can tell you that it's one of the best ways to be able to underwrite, and it's better for the consumer when they underwrite these loans. So I'm really pleased that we have 8 of the participating lenders, and again, we have to work in getting them. That's something that we're working with Tessa, providing them really training to the lenders and seeing what the barriers are. The minimal credit score for these programs for the One Plus Boston is 640. For singles and in condos is the minimal credit score. And anyone that is under that score, what we do is that we work with them to make sure that they go into our credit booster program and see if they can use, make sure that they qualify for this program. But lenders have different options to use for the BHA, but we really encourage them to use first the One Plus Boston so they can have that enhancement of the interest rate and down payment assistance.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Fernandez-Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My last couple questions, one was answered already, but the other one is, I guess, any plans to, it sounds like you're already collaborating with financial institutions to explore like other innovative ideas, and clarity on that if I'm wrong, but any plans to evaluate effectiveness, any studies or any like data comparative analysis of any sort to evaluate effectiveness?
Yeah, so, I think for us, the main evaluation of effectiveness has just been the total change in tempo of how many families we have transitioning to homeownership. I mean, it's just been night and day. This is not something where we've run a double-blind trial or anything. Although, again, to me, it's sort of like, we know that if, for instance, if it wouldn't be efficacious, if it turned out that all the families on our wait list right now were able to buy housing without the down payment assistance, then we wouldn't need it, but it turns out that they can't. So I think in a number of ways, the kind of empirics of the situation have demonstrated that we really need this program. But one of the reasons, we are definitely collecting a lot of data about where people are buying, at what price points, and all of that, so that we can kind of really understand that counselor, and also so that we can make the pitch, like you and I were discussing earlier, for more funding, right? So we can say, we think it's right in that sweet spot of, it won't happen without this program, and with this program, it does happen, right? So it's like, it's necessary, but it's also sufficient, which is a really nice place to be with an intervention like this.
Final question. I guess just wondering, thank you so much, Director Bach. I guess just wondering in terms of like the rent-to-own program, I know that there were some conversations in terms of BHA considering condoizing and maybe implementing a rent-to-own program. Where are you with that, if at all?
So the one place where we've looked at this in terms of our portfolio, because obviously, like, you know, it's important for us to provide long-term, like, anchored opportunities on the rental public housing side in all of our neighborhoods, and we're not looking to change that. We do have some scattered sites on the state portfolio that are very hard for the BHA to maintain and are also kind of perfect homeownership opportunities. And so we did get some money from the city, and there's been some continued support also from the state to basically like transitioning a set of those units into homeownership opportunities, where the first opportunity would go to like folks who are living in those units now and to our state public housing residents to buy them.
Is that to increase stock or to actually pilot the rent to own?
So I think right now the theory would be, because we don't want to lose total public housing units, so we got money from the state so that we can create new public housing units but consolidate it on one site, because they're actually easier for us to manage anyways, and then take those like kind of hard for us to manage but great homeownership opportunity ones and be able to sell them to our residents. And you know, the exact financing mechanism of that is still a little bit TBD, because we're waiting. We can't do it till we have the replacement units online, and so we're waiting for those to be finished developing. But we are starting that process of. We also want to make sure that we use money to invest in these properties, so that if we sell them to our residents, we're selling a good product. We're not giving people a dog that's going to be a real challenge to maintain. So at this stage, we're still in the like, you know, process of doing outreach with the residents who live in some of these developments and making sure that like kind of there's a lot of community buy-in and support for it. But we are looking to go that route on a small scale.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I understand we have one person waiting for public comment. Marisol Costello.
Madam Chair, it seems like she might have left the Zoom already.
Okay, well, we have anyone else?
No.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
Madam Chair, can I say one thing? Just
go ahead.
Just because Tessa sent me some notes about some of the lending barriers back to the lenders conversation. I think, you know, I mentioned the credit issue. I think that making lenders able to understand the housing assistance payments that voucher holders get and how to factor them into their pre-approval letters, that's definitely been like a learning curve. And so I think, you know, a lot of our folks have learned it, but I think looking for ways to just make that more broadly known is something that we're working on. And I think that, and then the other thing is that the way the program works for some of the mortgage products, the funds, ultimately the mortgage is going to be paid with the federal money going directly to the lender rather than passing through the client, which is great for the lender because they know it's going to come into their account every month. But sometimes that actually creates a delay barrier because the lender needs to like set up the account. And so those have been the types of things that I just wanted to flag that we've kind of had to like work through. And it's one of the reasons that you need a kind of stable of lenders.
And it also reflects the importance of having a team like the Boston Home Center and folks who really know the system and know how. And Joanna's expertise as a realtor guiding folks through this process as well are all very, very important.
Super important, yeah. And like I said, I mean, like Megan and Tessa have really been the magic sauce making this thing happen. We need the money, but when I said the money was necessary and sufficient, I really meant the money plus Tessa and Megan. So.
Thank you.
And Karen.
This has been a very good conversation this afternoon. I will just call on my colleagues for closing remarks. Councillor Worrell, would you like to, and I'll call on anyone else who's still here.
There's some time for more questions, Chair Braden. I'm joking.
If you go ahead, if you have an outstanding burning question, go for it.
You know what? Since you said I can ask one question.
I shouldn't do this.
Are all the home buyers were they all just voucher holders, or were any of them like actual BHA residents?
You mean public housing residents?
Public housing residents.
I know
right.
some of them are public housing residents. I don't have the split in front of me. So I'll ask Tessa if she's got that. But if she doesn't get it in time, we'll send it to you after. But it's been a mix. I would say lion's share, Section 8 residents. The other thing is that I think we have, I think we have more Section 8 residents kind of on that cusp income-wise. But and then obviously sort of, but Tessa says 21 of them are public housing. So actually that's pretty close to half.
Oh, wow.
So
Yes,
that's more than I thought. Yeah.
Right. So then now we'll be able to get more people off that wait list. I mean, I know it's not a lot, but yeah.
Right. No, but it counts. Everyone counts. So yeah. So in that situation, they go, and then we get to pull somebody off the 42,000 family public housing wait list that we have. So but each one of those is a family, right? And it makes a real difference for them.
Right. It does. It does. Well, again, thank you for all your work on this. Thank you for collaborating. I want to shout out, Megan, Tessa, Nick. I know I'm missing a few other people. Oh, Joel. I know I'm missing someone else, but your whole team has been amazing. Very responsive, and always willing to have a conversation with me on this. So I'm excited to see this working the way it is. Also happy to see my people over at Thumbprint Realty making sure that they get the word out and helping guide families through this process, but also help lenders, right, understand what's going on. So big shout out not only to Joanna, but also Alex and that whole Thumbprint team. And this is something I'm passionate about, so you can always expect me, anytime there's money to be advocated for or a program to advocate for, this will be one of my priorities, because it hits, like I said earlier, it hits on so many different buckets that we talk about: generational wealth, housing stability, and giving Boston residents a real chance to buy here in the city of Boston. So looking forward to seeing this program grow, and thank you again.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Anderson, closing remarks?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess just to reiterate how the critical importance of homeownership voucher program, in addressing these housing challenges that we are facing, just throughout Boston, throughout the nation, throughout the world, I guess, and particularly in light of all the persistent racial disparities in homeownership rates. Very interested in that, and I really appreciate the questions today and shedding light on all of the successes and challenges of the program, as well as it does sound like we are exploring. Councilor Bach, Director Bach, you are obviously doing phenomenal just in the examples that you've given. Very familiar with the housing, BHA particularly. I used to direct a shelter in Dorchester and connecting folks to housing. I know that the program now sounds like more efficient than before. Hoping to have more conversations about streamlining the application process if that hasn't happened already. But the things that I think about are usually in terms of systemic oppressive structures. It's usually red tapes and bureaucratic processes that don't work for all. So just looking at how we can work to obviously advocate for more funding, and as well as just meaningful steps towards closing the homeownership gap, racial gaps, and particularly promoting economic equity in our city. So thank you so much, and Madam Chair, and to the maker and your team. I second Councilor Worrell's comments. You have an amazing team, very pleasant to work with, and exceptionally efficient. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Fernandez Anderson. I think this has been a really great conversation this afternoon. Thank you, Councillor Worrell, for being the lead co-sponsor. Thank you, Councillor Councillor Kenzie Bach, and Karen and Joanna and all of your team that are here, Tessa and everyone else. I really appreciate all the great work. We're certainly innovating and stretching the envelope a little here in Boston, and I do hope we can get you resources to help build on this program and keep it going and expand it. So that's wonderful. Thank you all for being here. And with no further ado, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell.
Thank you. Thank you.
And right before 5 o'clock.
Oh, good. Inbound. Good timing. Thank you.
Thank you all.